Chapter 5. Stop, thief! Oh, man, said Jack, dazed. She was nuts. Everyone here is nuts, including Mr. Dickens. It's all my fault, said Annie. I shouldn't have. No, don't worry, said Jack. We just have to catch him and try to fix things. He couldn't have gone far, said Annie. She and Jack glanced up and down the busy street. The afternoon sun had disappeared. Dark clouds filled the sky. Look, there he is, said Annie, pointing. Jack saw Mr. Dickens weaving through the horse and carriage traffic. He was signaling to a cab driver with his walking stick. Mr. Dickens! Cried Annie. She started into the street, but Jack grabbed her just in time. Another horse and cab clattered by, barely missing them. He's getting away, said Annie. I know, said Jack, but we don't want to get run over. Look, said Annie, there's the driver who brought us here. I'll bet he's waiting for us. Across the street was a red cab, pulled by the small fat horse. Great, said Jack. He dodged the carriage traffic and rushed toward the driver. Hi there, Jack yelled. Thanks for coming back. We need a ride. We have to follow. He started to climb into the cab. Sorry, no free rides today, boy, the driver said. I've got mouths to feed at home. He jiggled his reins and his horse took off. Jack nearly fell backward onto the sidewalk. Wait, don't you remember us? He called. We're the young gentlemen from Frog Creek. But the driver didn't seem to hear him in all the traffic. Annie touched Jack's arm. He didn't recognize us. We don't look like gentlemen anymore, she said. Our clothes are ragged and we're covered with soot. Oh, man, said Jack. Everyone was so nice to us when we looked rich. Now it feels like the whole world's against us. I'm sorry, it's all my fault, said Annie. Forget it, said Jack. We just have to find Mr. Dickens. Come on, let's try to find his carriage. Clutching his green bag, Jack led the way down the street. He and Annie half ran, half walked past a long row of shops. As they looked for Mr. Dickens, they passed little girls sewing in the windows of a dress shop. They saw boys sweeping trash and polishing boots, and girls selling matches and meat pies. Jack had never seen so many kids working at real jobs. Hey, isn't that him getting out of the carriage? Said Annie. She pointed to an intersection in the distance. A small man wearing a top hat and carrying a walking stick was climbing down from a cab. Yeah, I think it is, said Jack. Hurry! Jack and Annie ran up the sidewalk, dodging shoppers and merchants. By the time they got to the intersection, Mr. Dickens had disappeared again. Ah, darn, said Annie. Let's keep looking, said Jack. If we don't find him soon, we'll go back to his house and wait for him outside the gate. A light rain began to fall as Jack and Annie started down a crowded, muddy road. They passed shabby shops and rows of small shacks. They passed vendors selling second-hand clothes and hats and shoes. They saw lots of ragged kids hanging around the street. Jack caught the eye of a big, tough-looking boy slouching against a lamp-post with his hands in his pockets. As Jack passed him, the boy looked him over. Jack saw the boy say something to another kid. The two of them started walking after Jack and Annie. Think we're being followed, Jack said. Walk faster, said Annie. As Jack and Annie hurried up the muddy street, black smoke from chimneys blended with the rain. The air felt grimy and dirty. Jack glanced back. The two boys were getting closer to them. Run, said Jack. Jack and Annie ran past a butcher shop, a bakery, and a cigar store. Jack looked over his shoulder. The boys were running too. Jack slipped in the mud and fell. Before he could get up, the tough-looking kid caught up with him. The boy grabbed Jack's green velvet bag and took off. The magic violin, the bow, and their book were in the bag. Help! Stop him! Cried Jack. He's got my bag! Jack jumped up from the mud and charged after the kid, but the big boy tossed the bag to the other boy. That one's got it now, Annie yelled, pointing. Jack and Annie took off after the boy with the stolen bag. Fierce anger made Jack run as fast as he could. He caught up with the kid and wrestled the bag away from him. Then Jack turned around and started running back the way he'd come. Annie followed. Stop! Thief! The boy yelled. Jack and Annie kept running through the black rain, passing the same shops again. "Stop, thief!" Both boys were yelling now. "Stop, thief!" Thief? Jack thought wildly. Why were they calling him thief? But others quickly joined the two boys, chasing after Jack and Annie. "Stop, thief!" the butcher yelled. "Stop, thief!" the baker yelled. "Stop, thief!" the cigar seller yelled. Even dogs and old ladies joined the chase through the muddy streets. Jack looked over his shoulder. The two boys and a bunch of grown-ups and dogs were running after him and Annie. Everyone was yelling, "Stop, thief!" "What should we do?" cried Annie. "Keep running," Jack answered. He clutched the green bag closer to his chest and spotted an alley up ahead. "Turn right," he called. Jack and Annie ran into the narrow alleyway filled with junk, broken wagon wheels, cracked plates, old pots and pans. The crowd followed them down the alley. Everyone kept shrieking, "Stop! Thief!" As the black rain fell, Jack and Annie scrambled over the rubble, desperately looking for an escape. Soon they came to a dead end. There was nowhere else to run. Jack and Annie turned around. The crowd was closing in on them. Jack clutched the green bag in his hand. "Get away from us!" he shouted. "This is my bag! It's mine!" But the crowd kept moving toward him, led by the two boys who'd stolen the bag. They sneered at Jack. "We've got you now, thief," said one. "Just hand the bag over to us," said the other, "or we'll have to take it." "Play the violin, Jack," said Annie. Of course, thought Jack. Only magic could save them now. Jack turned his back to the crowd, but before he could unbuckle the bag, someone grabbed him by the shirt collar. Jack looked up. A large man wearing a blue uniform loomed over him. "I'll take that bag, boy," the policeman said, holding out his hand.